right. Well, there's an exciting time, like I said, but most of the big stuff tends to hit in mid-June with E3 and now EA Play, but we are getting some early information from, let's start with EA Sports, and that's Madden NFL 18, which released a teaser trailer. We got the cover announcement of Tom Brady. We got the information on the special edition, which is called the GOAT edition, which will go for $80 and has a bunch of extra, mostly Ultimate Team stuff. And then also a lot of feature news and gameplay related news, which is always interesting to get it this far in advance, because it's something they'll be able to go back into and show us more of in the coming weeks and months. But there's some big stuff. We kind of had a good idea that there was going to be a story mode that was confirmed through the trailer. Frostbite Engine, we knew that was going to make its debut in Madden 18. But then we got some other interesting stuff, and we'll get to that in a bit. Let's start with those first two, though. Frostbite Engine and a story mode, because we can look right to FIFA 17 to kind of get an idea of what to expect as far as how it's going to play its role, how they're going to play their roles in Madden. Frostbite Engine, even in the description here that EA released, it's about visuals. It's not going to overhaul the gameplay. It's about stunning stadium exteriors. They're calling it the most photorealistic game to date. Firework displays, player runouts, weather elements that will be all improved. And then Frostbite, of course, helps with the story mode. And as we saw in FIFA, it was all about Frostbite improving the visuals, the surroundings, and then helping to generate that story mode. And so in FIFA 17's story mode, what you had was a situation where you controlled a pre-built character and you took him through kind of his early days, even kind of child days, and then through up to and through your first season in the Premier League, and kind of the ups and downs faced along the way. I think that's probably a fair expectation for Madden. What you saw in the trailer was the character, presumably it'll be a pre-built character again, looking out at Lucas Oil Stadium, which is the site of the NFL Scouting Combine. So they're giving you a hint there of what to expect. But I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you think as far as Frostbite Engine story mode, your expectations for what we're going to get out of it in Madden 18? Chris, you want to start?
Yeah, I think when you point to FIFA, that's a great comparison to what we're going to do. I don't think Frostbite reinvented FIFA in any way. I think it's going to take, like most games, you install a new feature, new engine like that. It normally takes 3 years to really flesh it out before you start seeing the total change. I do think it's going to have a gameplay update because Frostbite specifically has to deal with weather and it can deal with animations as well. But I don't think you get that in the first year. So this year, like you said, I think we're going to look at graphical upgrades, mostly cutscenes, maybe on the field, maybe making the players look a little more realistic, because while the faces are done, they do face models, they're still, I think they lag behind when it comes to like NBA 2K or even MLB to an extent, or FIFA for sure.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat of a prioritization there, because you're usually not seeing, they're wearing helmets.
Yeah, good point.
So it's not the most important thing. I think they want to get the faces right. They're probably not too worried about head sizes and things of that nature.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, with that and the gameplay stuff that they seem to update it, it's a wait and see for me with the gameplay stuff. They can talk gameplay all they want without actually showing anything. Yeah. So, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little later too. Mm-hmm. But so pretty much everything they've announced sounds really cool. The journey mode sounds really cool. I think we're pretty sure it's going to be a story mode like FIFA, where it's one story.
Right.
Like you said, probably a created person. But I mean, I don't think story mode for Madden is a huge thing. I just don't think it was. It sounds weird to say that, but when I was going through the community, even the OS community, and which tends to be a lot different than the actual regular Madden community, but even on Twitter, the story mode wasn't a real shocker for anybody. Everyone was like, "Oh yeah, story mode." Mm-hmm. They were all very much focused on Tom Brady's arm, what it looks like when he's pumping it, or something, or something terrible like that.
His arm is too thin or something. I'll provide a little data here. I put up a poll shortly after all this information went out on my website. Got over 2,000 responses, and basically asking what of all this information, what's your favorite feature or upgrade that we know about for Madden 18. And I know I would agree with you, Chris, that you don't get the sense there's a lot of excitement about a story mode out there right now, but maybe that's the type of consumer or what that gets excited about a certain feature at this point in the year, especially on Operation Sports, where it's a more hardcore crowd. They may not be that interested in story mode, or they want some other type of information 3 months in advance. But in the poll, story mode actually came in first place, over 33% of the vote, beating out Frostbite Engine, which had 29%. And we'll talk a little bit about the numbers on the remaining things later. But story mode, and it's funny, there's comments in the article. If story mode wins this, that's a joke. It shows you why Madden's in the state it is today. Things like that. Like, people were worried that story mode is going to take resources from other areas of the game that they feel are more important. That's understandable to an extent, but I think it's fair to say, based on the results of the poll and based on how FIFA 17, over 12 million people, they released this number just last week, over 12 million people tried the story mode in FIFA, and it's been popular in NBA 2K, certainly, that this is a big deal. It's just that Madden's kind of the last one to do it, right? MLB implemented some of those ideas along the way, but Madden's really kind of pulling up the rear here as far as single-player career modes. Rich, how do you feel about, you played the Journey, or you played at least part of it. Does that translate to Madden, you think, that type of mode and that in the structure that they built it?
Oh, for sure. I think it's something that we have a tendency to dismiss, or not dismiss, that's not true, because we talk about it. I think we all have our own perspective, which is a very important one, which is deeply involved in the community of these kind of games. But I also have, just even in the last couple of days, in talking to a few kids who are my son's age, who love sports and who love video games. These are 9, 10, 11-year-old kids. They love the story mode. They all talk about who they got drafted by in NBA 2K, and who what soccer team that they're playing for. It's a big gateway for kids that I never realized until very recently, because, like I said, I'm talking to my son's friends, a couple who came over, and they play video games at my place, because of course I'm the cool dad who's got the various consoles, which is a good thing to be, I guess. So anyway, that's one thing that really struck me with how the story mode of these games really struck a chord with these kids. And these kids are smart, but they're not football Madden smart. It asks a lot of you to play Madden. It's a very complex and difficult game, especially if you haven't played it regularly. So if you're 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, it can be pretty tough to get into it, even if you're someone who loves football. So I think that, for one reason, just being able to make Madden a broader experience to a younger crowd, which the story mode definitely does, I think is good.
Well, yeah, Rich, I was just going to jump in and say I was actually going to go that direction also, as far as story modes, which is that these video games are very complicated. Whether it's NBA 2K, super complicated to pick up and play. Madden, complicated to pick up and play. All of them, really, except for maybe baseball. But what happens is that when you're intimidated by that, when you maybe don't have a complete grasp of the mechanics or the sport itself, one of the best ways to learn is through the story modes, I think, because it kind of acts as a tutorial in a way. They've built them that way to do that. But also, you're controlling one player on the field, on the court, on the pitch, that you just only have to focus on the goals for that one player and your specific tasks and assignments, as opposed to worrying about what your CPU teammates are doing, running plays, passing, immediately picking up the new player, controlling, switching around, calling audibles, all of that stuff that for us we have a decent grasp on because we've been playing for over a decade or 2 decades, whatever it is. And for others, though, that stuff is difficult. So I think a story mode kind of condenses everything into something that's easier to pick up and understand and succeed at.
Yes, the challenge is to make it fun. It's not nearly as difficult to make a soccer single-player mode or a baseball single-player mode or a basketball single-player mode fun. Because in basketball, if you got the ball, you can dribble it, you can shoot, you can pass, right? There's only 5 guys on the court. You're one of 5. Mm-hmm. In soccer, you're running up and down the field, and if the ball comes to you, you can pass it or shoot it, right? You've got some options. Yes, there's more people on the field. There's less action depending upon your position. And in baseball, you're either the pitcher or you're the hitter, right? Or occasionally the fielder. Mm-hmm. But it's a very focused experience. It's very, I think, much easier to make those experiences fun than it is in football. You can't possibly have a single-player story mode that is fun if you're a left tackle, right? Or if you're, a middle linebacker might be tough. Like football, it's much more difficult to, I think, make a single player experience fun on the field, so to speak. I would imagine they have to put you either the quarterback or the running back or the wide receiver position, or maybe just make you a quarterback. I don't know. The challenge is to make it fun, and that's what'll be interesting to see what their approach is, because I don't know what it'll be.
I would think that's probably what they're going to do is a certain position or a few positions, because what these story modes have done is your progression, even in FIFA, everything is stat-based, basically. You have to score a goal or score a certain number of skill points in a match, or score a number of have a certain average of points to move up in Road to the Show, or not points, but great ERA, great save stats, whatever it is, great average to be promoted in MLB, or you have to average a certain number of points and you're judged on numerical achievements in these games, and you don't get that as a cornerback. You don't get that as a defensive tackle necessarily. Where you're going to be putting up those numbers is quarterback, potentially running back, I would think, and wide receivers. Not very active even on a lot of plays. They're not active on running plays, not getting thrown to on every passing play. So making that an engaging experience and then tying it into the story somehow is going to be difficult outside of a few positions.
Yeah, and even just the mechanics of being a running back. Like you have to, when do you actually pick up control? When they hand the ball to you? Or do you have to press a button to collect the ball?
Oh, great. Or fumbled handoffs, Rich.
Right, or if you're a wide receiver, like what play, how often are you actually going to get the opportunity to catch the ball? And then when you catch the ball, what is it? Is it just pressing a button when it comes to you, but do you have to wait, 2 plays or 5 plays or 9 plays until they throw it your direction? Like, I just think it's going to be really difficult to make it fun. Not the story mode. I'm sure they can come up with an interesting angle on who you are and various things that happen to you. But just getting on the field, like, it's good. Basically, it's going to be a series of mini games. And how do you create that series of mini games to make it fun? I'll be very interested to see what they do, because to me, that's a big challenge.
Well, and the good news is they already have something like that in the game that kind of goes the way. Remember, MLB The Show, we were very happy they quote-unquote lifted critical situations as play the moments. Well, Madden already has play the moments in the game. So if you could use a version of play the moments in positions that weren't quarterback, because I think everyone knows when you play the career mode in Madden now, if you're not playing quarterback, it's a tough experience to continue to go through. There were a lot of problems with if you're a cornerback, like they wouldn't throw the ball at you. Once you got to a certain rating, quarterbacks just stopped throwing your way. And that's extremely boring. But imagine if you could be an offensive player a wide receiver or tight end and only have plays that you knew were coming to you. Or if you were a defensive skill player and you only got like 5 or 6 plays a game, like fielding and MLB The Show, where you knew you were involved in that play, and that's how that story mode keeps going.
So did we see kind of the beginnings of that, Chris, you think, with the with those opening cinematic sequences the last couple of years in Madden? Like the one where they put you into situations like throw to this player, or you weren't actually interactive in this portion of it, but they had a guy block a kick, and just situational stuff where maybe they give you an assignment to do to make a big play, something of that nature on special teams. Here, return this kick, try to return it for a touchdown, that kind of stuff. I mean, they kind of set up their own narrative-driven type sequences there. Whether that would work within the context of a story, I'm not sure.
Well, we're also sort of assuming that they have to go with a on-field experience where it is you as a single player. There's no rule that says you can't experience the story as a single person, but play the game as you traditionally play Madden, and that's you can choose to try to use your player or not use them or something like that, right? So we're assuming an approach based upon that's how sort of most games have done it, but Madden might take a different approach with it, which is another opportunity. Which, again, sort of thinking about it, that might actually be the way to go, right? Is to have that single player story mode, but then when you're playing the game, you're sort of controlling Madden as you know. But that would conversely defeat the purpose a little bit of what we were talking about earlier, which is making it an easier way for non-experienced Madden players to play the game.
I would say that one indication that it is probably controlling a single player is that this is a bit into speculation, but it's based on retail listings that it looks like we might be getting online team play returning, because it says that this Madden will have online of 2 to 6 players. So, if they built out, I think they would almost simultaneously build out those type of experiences if you're controlling a single player in the story mode, give you similar mechanics and similar camera, things of that nature for online team play. And also, what online team play used to be in Madden was you could pick certain positions, but you were restricted there. When you were in offense, you could have someone as quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, those type of things. So I wonder if they didn't build them out kind of right next to each other with that in mind, how they're going to make an experience engaging when you're controlling a single player.
Well, and to piggyback on that with talking about the online team play, Rex has actually started to respond to those comments on Twitter with a picture of 3 fingers up in the air.
Yeah.
So, why respond to it if it's not going to be in at this point?
Yeah. I think it's pretty safe to expect that at this point, and they would have shut it down by now since everyone's talking. There's a lot of people. It was not a very heavily played mode. We know that. That's why it got dropped. But there is a passionate group of people out there. It's just a matter of making that an engaging way to play. I actually somewhat enjoyed it, but lost interest with it at the time. I remember within the first year or two, and then didn't really bother with it after that. I can kind of see it, but they didn't really put resources into making it very good after that initial launch of the mode. So let's talk a little more gameplay then. There's 3 things to note here. Target passing, which we don't know a lot about this stuff, so I'm just putting that out there first. But target passing says for the first time ever, you're no longer tied to throwing at your open wide receiver. You can throw to who you want in the exact spot on the field with target passing, giving you ultimate control over where the ball is thrown. So that sounds like you can throw to a spot instead of just trying to lead the receiver or throw low to the receiver or whatever it might be. You might be able to throw to a spot and try to get there. Coverage assignments. Know your job in pass coverage with an on-screen real-time UI system informing you of your coverage assignment and pass defense. I don't really know what that's referring to necessarily. It might be the player that you're controlling specifically. When I saw coverage assignment, I was hoping that would mean that you can assign a your number one corner to follow a certain wide receiver or something like that, which we've needed for a while. Hopefully that's in too. There's also coach adjustments, customize AI to fit your game plan and make situational changes to strategy on the fly. We don't have a lot to go on with these. We'll have to see them in the context of the actual games being played and what EA actually has in mind with these things. But Chris, anything there stand out to you that you like the sound of the most?
Well, coverage assignment, like you said, I hope that involves being able to assign a quarterback or cornerback 1 to wide receiver 1. That'd be great. Mm-hmm. Target passing is their answer to, hey, guess what? If you overthrow the ball, it's no longer on the CPU. It's on you.
Good.
Again, one step closer to making everything in competitive game style user-controlled. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is arcade, simulation, and competitive. The simulation
You're getting
mode.
ahead of us. You're getting ahead of us here.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We'll get to play styles in just a moment, but
honestly, and the coach adjustments. The thing that I hope shows up in coach adjustments is maybe like a 2 running back system, like those kind of strategies. Like if you have 2 quarterbacks that are like around the same rating, mm-hmm. and the one's not performing well, pull him. I don't think it's going to go that far, but it does sound like customize the AI to fit your game plan and make situational changes, like situational changes to strategy by the AI makes it sound like there's going to be some kind of organic, and I hate to use that word in gaming, but like organic way of an AI coach acting like an actual human coach in the NFL.
Making adjustments, you mean?
Yeah, like actually, I would hope, but I mean, I think that's a pipe dream, but it's a pipe dream I hope comes to fruition, because that would actually be, there's not a lot to talk about with franchise mode. They didn't release a lot about it. So mm-hmm. I think if they could do those fixes, that may be more important to franchise mode than making actual updates in franchise mode.
Yeah. Well, you went into play styles, you started to there for a second. Let's talk about that, because that's a big deal with Madden 18, and it's something that I've seen a lot of people ask for off and on over the years, which is, look, these developers have to balance their games to appeal to as wide an audience as possible. So it can't be too simulation based, it can't be too arcadey. They have to kind of find a place in the middle that can satisfy the most people possible. And it's an impossible thing to do, because you're going to hit a sweet spot, yes, but then there's going to be people on the outside who wish the game played differently. And so EA's solution to that is what they're calling play styles. And what they're doing is they have 3 different play styles: arcade, simulation, and competitive, that based on what you choose, you're going to get a different type of experience. And arcade is going to be, it says it's going to be filled with spectacular plays and scoring with pretty much no penalties, I would assume. Simulation, true to team and player ratings and authentic rules and gameplay. That's going to be the default in franchise mode. And then there's competitive, which is all about stick skills. They're trying to take out the randomness there in competitive games, and that's going to be for their tournaments, their esports, and for online games. Rich, where do you fall in a play style? What do you like? Because I know you like simulation, but you don't like penalties, which makes you an arcadey or competitive player, Rich.
Well, I mean, I completely understand what they're doing here, and it makes complete sense to me, because we know that EA is really investing heavily in promoting esports. And the Madden Challenge, which I think the most recent one just wrapped up very recently. So having a competitive setting makes complete sense. And then having the simulation setting, which is technically speaking, I'm sure for people like me, where I enjoy playing with a certain level of realism, mm-hmm. but I'm not a whiz with the sticks. And then, of course, arcade, which we presume is for the newcomers and the younger crowd. So I completely understand all 3. I like all 3. All that needs to be done is you take the simulation and then you turn off penalties, and then you're probably exactly where you need to be.
Chris, I know you posted on Twitter some thoughts on this, including how it affects competitive gaming, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, and we might debate this a little bit and whether it's the best route to take as far as that goes.
Me arguing on Twitter? No, it's never happened.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I saved the tweet. I screenshotted it because you just will delete it later.
Yeah, right. So for competitive gaming, and this has been a recent revelation for me, like within the last couple of weeks, for competitive gaming in terms of esports, I think the more stick skills and less randomness is better. And the reason I think that is, when you talk about esports in general, and I'm not just talking about sports games, I'm talking about League of Legends, I'm talking about people that watch fighting games, the randomness is completely, well, I won't say completely, almost completely taken out of those games. The draw of the esport is, well, your initial draw is whatever game you're playing. So most people will tune into Madden because it's Madden. But the way you keep those players there is you give them a reason to like the gamer, not the game. So, and the two ways you like a gamer is either by his personality, which isn't always easy with gamers, or his stick skills. If he's really good at what he does, people will flock to him, or her, I apologize. So that's what the Madden Championship was about. Even the championship was Problem Right and Skimbo, two of the top stick skill guys, playing back and forth. But the thing is, so like, let's say Problem has, and I'm going to choose an example here, or a hypothetical example. Let's say he's down 5 and he throws to Randy Moss in the end zone with no one within 5 feet of him. In a simulation type game, there's a chance that Randy Moss, which Problem not only picked the right play, but made sure it was the right coverage he threw against, and it did everything right. If Randy Moss drops that ball, then the whole competitive gaming part of it's gone. There's no reason. I honestly, if it's I'm talking about Randy Moss. I'm not talking about Chris Ivory on a wheel route, because there was a drop ball in the Madden Championship by Chris Ivory that was argued, but Ivory's got like a 50 catch. I'm talking about a 90+ catch, wide open in a competitive gaming, not in like a franchise game. So I'm in a competitive gaming mode where there's $100 or some $1,000 on the line, and the problem is not the gamers in this point. The problem is that all the people watching that are immediately going to, in real life, they would be able to argue that the player sucked, the player lost focus. In real life, a penalty can be blamed on the referee. In esports, the argument goes right back to this game is trash. This game. Well, I'm sorry. That's what happens is the game caused that to happen. So now you have viewers mad at the game, and they lost all link with anything else going on other than saying, and it happened in the Madden Championship game. Rex, your game is trash. If something happens that the game caused, not the gamer.
Yeah, well, look, Twitch chat, they're going to find a way to say that no matter what.
Right, but I don't think it's just Twitch chat. I think that, if I was watching a game like that and I saw someone drop a ball in a competitive game like that with a 90+ catch rating, as much of a sim gamer as I am, I would sit there and go, man, he did everything right and it still didn't work. That might be realistic, but I don't know.
So let me tell you why I disagree. And I understand where you're coming from there. And especially from the standpoint of a viewer watching and how they perceive the video game. But if you strip all the randomness out, and I mean all of it, which is basically what they're looking at doing, to me, the game becomes too vanilla, it becomes too sterile and too predictable. And this randomness is a part of sports. No player is perfect. Randy Moss has dropped balls. A lot of it depends on, of course, the player ratings and everything, but the player ratings have to play a role. Otherwise, why not just give everybody 99 rated players and everything, and then you can find out who's really the best, right? To me, the interest in watching these games potentially isn't about well, did the game execute perfectly? It's about the drama of the games. And I watched some of those esports matchups, and it was about the drama of fourth quarters coming down to a final play, big turnovers. It's about that stuff. That's the story to me of those games. And it's about overcoming challenges. I don't want to watch a game where there's no turnovers or there's no drop passes and everybody catches everything. Every kick is good. Every tackle is made. I mean, like, to me, the interest, and it's the same for when I'm playing these games, the interest isn't in everything executing perfectly every time. It's in, man, I dropped that pass. Well, now it's third down. Now let me do it now. And it becomes more dramatic when you overcome those issues. And look, you say everyone's going to rip on the game if Moss drops that catch. Well, everybody was ripping on the game anytime there was a fumble, Chris. Do you want to take out fumbles too, or we're not going to care about fumble ratings? Like, there's always got to be some randomness, or else, it's just perfection all the way down. And to me, that's not proving who's the better player.
But see, it's not just perfection. There's ratings in the game, so ratings are still going to have a part of that. And I used Moss for the reason of having a high catch rating. If you're talking about like a 70 catch guy, then yeah, that ball has to have a chance of being dropped. I'm not talking about it always being perfect. I'm talking about let me use MLB as an example, because this was another example I used on Twitter. If you center green a fastball in MLB, and with perfect timing, and I'm talking about everything perfect, I think it should be a hit. Mm-hmm. Now, if everything's perfect, if you were off by even, and my example that I used to somebody I was talking about was, let's say there's a dot in the middle of the PCI that's the same size as the ball. If the ball completely covers the dot, that's a base hit. But if even a little bit of that dot shows, then that's where you get your RNG. Your rating goes from there. The way competitive is being touted in this description, you get bigger rewards and bigger penalties for stick skills. So your hit stick, it's not a guaranteed fumble, but if you hit stick somebody, you have a better chance of causing a fumble than you would getting a big hit in the simulation mode. And that's what I mean, is that user stick skills, while, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. If everything is perfect, you have to have a perfect scenario. You have to start from some kind of baseline perfect. So if it's a 99 catch guy and the ball's right in his hands and you use the conservative catch, that should be a catch every time. Everything past that, yes, there should be some kind of RNG, some kind of random rating put into there with larger rewards for stick skills. But let's say that Moss now you didn't take control of, and you let the computer try to do that. Then you should get a larger penalty because you didn't use your user stick skills. And again, this is specifically for online head-to-head play. I'm not talking about for franchise mode.
Right. There's also a trade-off, like you said, hit stick. If you go for a hit stick, there's a larger chance you're also going to miss a tackle and then complain about that.
No, exactly. But I mean, that's what you mean with the bigger penalties. Like if you use or something for a bigger penalty, I agree with that.
So the other thing I would say is, in Madden's case, the reason why everyone expects perfection from a lot of these players, like Moss, you saw everybody with Moss, I think, in that tournament, is because they use salary cap mode for some of these tournaments, including, I believe, this last one, the championship one. And people stack their skill positions. Let's just talk about offense here, because they don't put anything into the offensive line right now. If offensive line mattered, then maybe you'd have lower rated players on the outside who you could more understand dropping the ball, or you have to distribute your strengths differently. And I think right now, just the lack of offensive line, everybody had 60 rated offensive linemen, and it sure didn't seem to matter. So I think that's just one specific flaw I'm talking about here. But as far as the play styles go, I'm not sure this is the right answer. I think it's good. in a sense that it's going to give people options to how they want to play, but I'm not sold on this being the way that competitive Madden kind of grows and becomes more popular. I'm not sure that it's going to make the games more fun to watch, personally.
I think it grows the viewership, but I don't think it grows the participation. And there's the flaw.
Doesn't that eliminate more people from feeling like they could ever even compete? Because part of online is, even if you're really good, part of online play is that even if you're fantastic at Madden, if you're one of the best players in the world, you're not going to win every game. You're sometimes going to get upset, and I think what you're doing here is you're kind of taking the potential for upsets out also.
Well, I think the upsets happen from somebody out strategizing or out user stick skilling somebody, and you're right. You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the one thing that I saw come up on Twitter this week with this is, well, what about the people that want to play simulation style online? And there's a large group of people that, like, they're mostly CFM guys or like the NBL, like the guys that run big time leagues. Well, they want to try their hand online, but they don't want to run competitive. They would rather run simulation. And I think these guys think this simulation is going to be a little more than what it will be. And that's one of the things I want to everyone should take a step back is when it says simulation, it's still going to be Madden.
Right.
Like, I don't think just because it says simulation, all it is going to be increasing the dice rolls on penalties and randomized things. I don't think it's going to be, when it comes to actual play style, I don't think it's going to be that much different. I really don't.
Yeah, Rich, do you have any thoughts on this?
Nope. Other than I think it's going to be a good attempt at trying to reach a broader audience. But there's clearly going to be a lot of debate. And the other thing we know is no matter what it is when it launches, it'll all be tweaked multiple times over the course of the first 4 weeks and the next 4 weeks and the next 4 weeks, so that there will be a ton of modifications and sliders and adjustments happening the whole time.
So just looking at the poll results again, I was surprised Playstyles was second to last place out of everything. It only got 6%, just over 6% of the vote. I don't know if it's just not something that's going to get people really pumped up months out in advance. A different type, a different balance to the gameplay depending on what you choose. But it's not something really we're seeing much excitement out of at this point. We'll just, again, like you said, Rich, we're going to have to see how it comes out of the box, how people accept it, and then what they do with as far as patching and tuning updates to adjust that. As far as the poll results go, those gameplay improvements we talked about that we don't know a whole lot about, that got 18%. Possible return of online team play got just under 10%. And then coming up in last place by far, Play Now Live with under 3%. And that is basically what you've seen in other sports games where they keep up to date with records and stats, and then you can pick up and play that weekend's games in Madden now, or pick up and play that weekend's games and then continue on in a franchise starting from that point instead. Do you guys have interest in that? I never really thought that would make a whole lot of sense for Madden just because it's a 16-game season as opposed to baseball 162, basketball 82. You know, like there's so many games in those other sports that you want the ability to pick up from the season and take on from there. And in Madden, with a 3-month regular season and only 16 games, I'm not sure if it's going to get as much use.
You know, football is such an event that I actually think if it were implemented a certain way, it would be much better. So what I mean is the whole play it live today is based solely on the fact that we're in the middle of the season. And granted, for the first 8 months after release, that's the case. But then once the season is over, that entire mode sort of ceases to have any usefulness to it. The other problem with sort of the play now with the live rosters is that there's no persistency. It's not part of anything else that you're doing. It's just sort of a one and done. So yes, it's fun in the moment, but you're not really contributing to your franchise or to your ultimate team or to really anything.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think is another reason that it doesn't seem to hit the mark for lots of people. What would be interesting in the NFL is not only to have it be a live mode, but because the course of a 17-week, 16-game season, the NFL is such a roller coaster because at various points during the season, certain injuries happen and certain teams get better and certain teams get worse.
Mm-hmm.
What would be more interesting to me, instead of being able to play live today, would be able to sort of do a flashback to, as the season goes on, be able to go back to week 1 or week 3 or week 5 with the teams as they were at that point and then play them then. So as the season goes on, you have a bunch of those different points, those games that you could play with the teams as they were at that point, and then perhaps pick them up and move forward or not. But at least just that to me makes it more compelling, because, like, for example, I'm an Eagles fan, and last year the Eagles were doing really well, and then they were winning very late in like the 5th or the 6th game of the season in Detroit. They were, I think, 3-1 or 4-1, and they had the game locked up and fumbled very late in the game when they were literally running out the clock. And Detroit scooped it up and then kicked a game-winning field goal, and the entire season spiraled down right after that.
Yeah.
And it would be so great to be able to go back to that game and win it and play it forward and see what would happen.
Is that something as an Eagles fan you would have to do pretty often, Rich? Go back to the start of the season to have a successful year?
I don't like you, Brian.
Yeah. Okay.